Okay. Okay. So, hello, welcome all people to our webinar. Hello. And it's a pleasure to have you all here. Hope you will be able to follow our webinar. And so what I would like to start with is to give a sort of presentation of the activities that we are going to present this morning by starting from the very origin of this DHarc Research Center. I mean, in 2017 we started with, I will try to share my screen in order to show you some stuff and to better discuss about, it seems it given me the possibility to share my screen. No, it given me the possibility to share the screen, but it was just to show you the very origin, as I told you, of the activity in the digital humanities domain within the University of Bologna that has been started with the reflection on the role of digital humanities by reasoning on the possibility to start with a master degree. So together with Fabio Vitali and the Department of Computer Science, we started to reflect on the creation of an international master degree that is called now Digital Humanities and Digital Knowledge. And the role of this master degree was to create, to offer a sort of cross-disciplinary curriculum designed to foster a close connection between humanities and the science and the sciences of representation, processing, of both information and knowledge. And with this degree, we started to think about the role of combining digital theories, methodologies, and techniques together with some specific fields within the humanities. In detail, philology, literature, cultural heritage, with a special attention to archives and libraries, and to add some other knowledge related and coming from the discipline of economy, on social media, and from law. And starting with degree a couple of years after the starting of this degree, so in 2019, we decided to add to the activity, the teaching activity and the educational activity inside DHDK, to add to this experience also a research aspect. I mean, the idea of the degree was to work a lot on projects. As Joanna Drucker, for example, says in DH 101, we started exactly with a very basic idea. We have to manage a sort of digital assets. We have to define and to create some kind of structure in order to manage these digital assets. We need to reflect on services that we want to give to both machine and human final user. And we need a sort of display, a sort of visualization of this data. So starting from this very, very basic approach to digital humanities project, which is one of the most important approach that we have to digital humanities from the point of view of the HDK, that is from our master degree, we decided to launch this DHarc DHarc is the Digital Humanities Advanced Research Center. So it's a center that was thought exactly in order to create a connection between the educational activity inside the master degree and the real research in projects that are related to the domain. So, which was the main point of DHarc. Again, as the master degree, also DHarc was born as a common activity between me and the department and people working in the Department of Classical Philology and Italian Studies, and the DISI, that is the Department of Science, of Computer Science and Engineering. And we decided to work on a three, we can say, branch of activity for creating this research center. To teach early career researchers. So the main point was to create an environment to let young researcher, early career researcher, to find a place where to put in practice the knowledge acquired during the master degree. And in general, to bring innovation in humanistic activities through our own vision of digital humanities, which is strictly connected to the notion of knowledge, and so to the use of the notion of knowledge as a methodology in order to think about humanities from the point of view of the managing of the life cycle of humanistic data. And then to support scholars in designing projects in the digital humanities domain. So the role of DHarc was exactly to define a place for connecting students, researchers, but also IT staff, and support scholars and institutions for designing, developing, and maintaining research project inside the DH. Together with this approach, we decide to put inside DHarc our experience in already existing projects. So now, inside the center, we have a number of projects. Some of them are projects that the members of DHarc have already created during their research activity, but we have also projects that has been created by researchers that are members of DHarc, but that are also platform useful in order to let young researchers to practice their knowledge in the digital humanities in order to enrich from some points these already existing projects and to enhance those projects with more services, visualization issues, dataset creation, that is to add the knowledge coming from the experience of the digital humanities and digital knowledge master degree into a real practice in producing a project or in participating to already existing projects managed by DHarc members. So the reason of this webinar today is exactly related to the fact that with the master degree, we decided to define some small grants for let students from the HDK to work in practice inside one of the different projects. So the project that we are going to present today are projects created from students that now are doctors, so they have been all of them are now graduated. And they graduated during the very lockdown, so it was March 20, if I remember well. And I remember I told them a lot of time when we spoke about the possibility to present their work for the thesis. It was the first day of March. I told them, okay, guys, now are the first day of March, so yes, now everything is online, but you will see that on the 20th of March will be absolutely in presence. And I was completely wrong. And their presentation was all managed through our University of Bologna platform. The University of Bologna decided to choose Teams as a platform for managing this online teaching and managing education issues and activity. And so they were all graduated on March 20 in a similar situation, that is in a sort of online environment. And so they spend a very short time. So they were, I'm really proud of them, because in a very, very short time, they were able to produce new projects and to work in a short time on already existing project, but also on the creation of completely new projects. So today we are going to introduce two kinds of different activities. One is the creation by scratch of new projects in the DH domain. And one other is the enhancement or the rethinking of already existing projects through new methodologies and, again, through new services that were able to enrich and enhance already existing projects. So I'm very, very proud of them. I just introduce very quickly the different projects, and the idea is to present you the different activities and the different projects, and then to discuss on each of these projects. So we are going to start with Fabio Mariani. The project by Fabio Mariani is called DHDK. And the idea was to create a data set of projects created and realized by students of DHDK. And Fabio, we will tell us the origin of this project, the technology that he decided to use, the methodology that he decided to implement in order to produce this data set. The second project will be presented by Martina Dello Buono, and is strictly related to an already existing project managed by Paolo Italia and Fabio Vitali, which is the Philo editor. And Martina especially work on the web interface of this Philo editor, but also on services that could be managed to this platform. Then Sebastian Barzaghi will present a project related to an already existent project created by me and implemented and developed by Marilena D'Aquino, which is the Letters by Vespasiano da Bisticcia. And Sebastian especially work on the issue of reproducibility of a completely linked open data edition, and he produced plenty of documentation stuff in order to give the possibility to reproducibility of semantic digital edition. Then finally we have Valentina Pasquale. Valentina started as Fabio with a new project, which is called Vasto, is the digital edition, critical and diplomatic transcription of the Storia Fiorentina by Varchi. And she will tell us about the development of the application for managing this digital edition. And the very last stuff will be an open discussion with DHarc members. So we have the possibility to discuss with you, so with all people attending, but we will have also the speech by some of the DHarc members, especially with Marilena D'Aquino, Silvio Peroni, Fabio Vitali, and Paola Italia, that are already in our backstage in order to manage this activity. And so we will open a discussion on the future of the research in digital humanities and in the role of the DHarc in enhancing the research inside digital humanities. So thank you very much for all people attending on the live on YouTube or on the live on the DHDK Facebook page. And so I leave the word to Fabio, which is the very first speaker. So Fabio, welcome.
Hi everybody, good morning.
And so I leave you the stage.
I'm sharing my screen. Can you see it? No? Can you see my screen? All right, I am having problem in sharing my screen, so I'm going to introduce it by voice. So my so my task was about 2 challenges, and is about the first challenge was to create a project brand new in 115 hours of work, and it was really tough. Then the second challenge was to have a bottom-up application in order to make students responsible to sharing their projects. So the point was to let the students have the complete control of the applications. So the first point was to create a form that I hope I'm going to show you as soon as possible. And then let the people we're having technical problems, sorry.
Sei riuscito?
Yes, but in a recursion way. Can you see my project?
Yeah? No. Okay.
Max, sì. Oh, okay. So sorry for the problem. It's demo effect. So as you can see, this is the main website. It's DHDK, Digital Humanities and Digital Knowledge Educational Yearbook. So yes, the idea is to have an educational yearbook. So a double face platform. On one end, we have the yearbook of our course, Digital Humanities and Digital Knowledge. That means that our study course can have a single platform to sell and to show to other people, maybe students or other university, what we are doing in our university, because as you have seen, and as Professor Tomasi already said, our university is really focused on the creation of projects from students. So it's nice to have a single platform in order to share our projects. On the other hand, we have a kind of student portfolio. We have seen my, let's say, generation of students after the graduation, when we have to share our curriculum and so on. It's really hard to share every single project that we did during our university period. So the idea is to have a single place, a single URL to redirect to a university portfolio in order to show to people interested what we did during university. The first interface is the project interface. We are at the center of our database. We are talking about faceted search interface, so we can filter by here or by courses. Then, for example, we are watching at a demo actually now. So from a single project, we can browse the courses, in this case, social media technologies, or the GitHub, or the homepage of the project. Or better, to the GitHub repository if someone is interested on the code. In particular, in this step, we are going to create a particular place inside the DHarc repository on GitHub in order to store every single project made by student in a personal of the course focused repository, in order to have a kind of control, avoiding to lose some project. Then, as I already told you, there is also the student portfolio side. So we can see there is a particular web page to a particular URL, in this case with the variable with the name of the student. Then we can browse to the single student projects. In this way, for example, Martina Del Male can have her personal pages. Then we have the upload interface in order to share projects. This interface is direct to the students that will share as projects. So I will see you a little demo. We are going to have test title with fake URL. Then in this case, we are talking about a professor. So I don't know, Fabio Vitelli, a fake email, I hope. Sorry. So it's important to notice that we only accept Unibo mail, so studio.unibo or Unibo simple email. Then you can add also more authors if you wish. Then you select the academic here, and then you can choose whatever kind of exam you did in doing the project. And then you are going to put a confirmation mail in order to confirm what you sent to our database. In particular, we have the privacy and policy terms. It was really important to develop really strong privacy and policy terms of services, because actually we are talking about a single student sharing personal data of his colleagues. So we try to make it the more comfortable for students, and also more focused on the self-responsibility that everyone has in sharing data. So, for example, when you share data of your colleagues, when your co-authors in a project, you are taking your responsibility for their data. In particular, our data are going to be shared on a CC0 license. So it's really important that who is going to share the data knows really well what he's doing in that moment. In particular, we have also some data protection rights, because also users have some rights, obviously. And as we are going to see, we have a particular platform in order to meet the rights of our users, in our case, our students. So coming back to the form, we can accept the privacy terms. Then we have a small reCAPTCHA in order to prevent spamming. And sorry, obviously. And now the user, in this case me, is going to receive email of confirmation. Then we can move there. Move to the confirmation form. As you can see, we have our data that we just submitted. We can confirm, I'm sure. And then we are online. Now, in this point, we have the admin role. Our university, our course, really is really based on the collaboration of students in handling all the routine and the relationships inside our university. So in this case, since we wanted a bottom-up application, we created a particular area, an admin area, where admin, in our case, student representatives and student tutors, can help to moderate and clean up our application when there are some particular problems. In particular, for example, in order to meet our users' rights. This is, I'm already logging. Obviously, I'm not going to show you the credentials and so on. So an admin can do 5 different actions. In the Confirm project, an admin can see every project that has been uploaded and not confirmed yet. So in this case, we have our first project, test title of Vitelli Fabio. And then we can reject, because maybe, I don't know, there are some problems on the text, some link not working, or we can confirm. In this case, we are going to confirm. We are sure. And then obviously we are not, we don't have any confirmed projects. And we can move to the edit projects. In this area, we can handle the status of every single project. This is really important also on our users' rights, because from whatever reason they want to remove that project, we can do it really easily. On the other hand, if for some reasons they want the project offline, not removed, but offline, we can do it easily. So we are going to move offline our project. I will show you first that it is online now. This is the project online. And then we are going to make it offline. And now, as you can see, the project is offline and you cannot see it anymore online. Then also we have the problem that every year we have new courses and a new academic year, obviously. So for this reason, we created a small interface to upload the new data about courses in a really simple CSV file with academic year, course title, and course page URL in order to keep the website updated. Then also, again, in a context of user rights, we have the small form to change our username in case it's necessary. Really simple problem. If the name is wrong, we can easily rename it. And then there is also a small interface for the download data dump. Then the whole project runs on a Python server. I use Flask. I prefer Flask on Django, for example, in order to have a really modular platform. In fact, the idea of having a bottom-up application was also in the development in order to make the application really easy to update in the future if someone wants to introduce some novelty, some new applications on it. Then also all the data, the database is semantic. We are talking about n-quads graphs. That is that every project is actually a single named graph in order to make it really easy to remove it or to change some data on that single graph. And everything runs on a base graph triple store in a localhost. In this moment, our endpoint is not online, so we are not talking about open data, actually. The dump is open, the endpoint is not open in this step, because for some security reason, it's better to have it hidden from custom users. And then I think that's it. Obviously, if we want to discuss about it, we can discuss about it. In particular, about I'd like to discuss about if we want to consider this project a digital humanities project, because actually, in my point of view, it's more than an infrastructural project. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Fabio, for your presentation. So, before trying to discuss with Fabio and Silvio about this project, I invite people on YouTube and on Facebook to write their own questions just in order to then to present on the screen questions that emerge from people attending and to open the discussion on each project. So I ask Silvio if he wants to start, and then I will have some stuff waiting if there are people asking some details.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you, Francesca, for the introduction. Thank you, Fabio, for the presentation of your work. I agree with Fabio, honestly, since the whole project is more about infrastructure than a full digital humanities research project, as Fabio has anticipated. But I would like to stress the fact that of the infrastructure is indeed the important aspect here. I mean, According to my experience working at the DHarc and in handling data in general, all the tools that Fabio have decided to use for implementing and handling this kind of data are actually can be used for handling any kind of situation and research project, in particular in the digital humanities domain, that needs the use of data and the representation of this data by means of appropriate web technologies. So the fact of using Python Flask, which is something that the students in general of the HDK have learned during their activities within the course, and the fact of using RDF for representing data. So all semantic technologies behind it, RDF, OWL ontologies for defining the data model for describing the data, and using triple stores then for storing this data, exposing everything by means of web interfaces. So kind of mashup server-side technologies like Python Flask with client-side technologies. That means JavaScript tools, JavaScript libraries, and so on, to make a beautiful service. Also to expose the results of the activities that the students of the HDK usually do during the 2 years of the master's degree, and also to allow basically people to so administrators to modify it, to extend it with additional information and so on. Is just a wonderful example of how all the technologies that the students of the HDK learn during the 2-year courses can be applied for a real project. And this is just an example where there are data involved, semantic data involved, web technologies involved. And even if we are talking about project, we are talking about metadata of project, the same infrastructure, the very same infrastructure can be reused basically for handling any other kind of DH project you can have in mind, exactly by using the same tools. So using Flask for handling the web part, using semantic technologies for creating the representation of the data, and using JavaScript for exposing these information in a well-shaped form for web users in order to allow users to interact with the data and in the end even add additional data to the existing one. So this is just my quick comment for the whole thing that Fabio have introduced. I don't know if there are any questions.
Yeah, we have a question. So, how that is tool to be used by other organizations? I mean, actually, the tool is focused on how other universities study course, so digital humanities and digital knowledge course. Obviously, actually, I mean, everyone that has a Unibo email can send us data. Obviously, it's up to our students, our admin, to show or remove this kind of project, if it is relevant or not to our study course. But I will say, no, we are not ready to be used by other organizations in this moment. Maybe the only external use that it can be made is by students if they want to sell their data as a kind of digital portfolio to other organizations. I mean, when they are going to send their CV to an organization or so on. So yes, my answer is not. We are not ready to be used by other organizations. Obviously, if, for example, our university is interested, I mean, other master courses want to create this kind of platform, obviously, it's really easy to change and to adapt the platform to another kind of university course. Simply change the name and the courses that you are going to select. But yeah, it's not ready now.
if I may add a comment here, all the software, Fabio, you can confirm this, but I'm pretty sure that all the software is available online. So the source code of the project. So in principle, even if this has been treated for a specific need that we had within the HDK, can be easily readapted to me for other needs within the University of Bologna, which is the easiest thing to do, but can be, of course, kind of personalized for any other needs. All the tools that we are using are totally open source. So if you want to replace exactly the same infrastructure, then you reuse the code that Fabio have developed for doing exactly the same thing in a different university, in a different institution. You just can do it. The code is available on GitHub. It's open. It's associated with an open source license. So even if the tool right now is not ready for being directly readopted by external organization, let's say, they can download it. They can adapt it according to their needs, their own email addresses, their own specific server technologies, and whatsoever else, and then they can directly reuse the code as it is.
Okay, maybe Marilena has some more questions related to this point or to other points related to your project.
Yes. All right. Is the only problem the provenance of people uploading projects? I mean, actually, there is a really simple regular expression to prevent people outside Unibo to share projects. So it's not a particular problem. Obviously, as Silvia introduced, the code is open source and just needs some little work on change some particular aspects. In particular, for example, the provenance of people, because actually it's really simple to prevent people outside Unibo to share their data. So yes, I will say it's not a particular problem. It's only a problem of convert our platform to a different one, but only on really simple and easy details. Yes, actually, I'm reading the second one in confirm to what Marilena is saying. And yes, actually, it's since it's an open source project, so the code is open to everyone. It's really easy to turn the platform in a more general purpose tool. It's only about a point of what kind of general tool, what is the target of the tool actually. About versioning.
Yes, I see that also Roberto. Ciao Roberto, thank you for your agreement. And yes, one of the main point of the whole project that you will listen during this morning, our orientation, our belief in all the project that we have managed is to the notion of reproducibility. So the point is to document and to put all the different details related to the application just in order to let this application to be reused and to become a sort of model. We have a lot this kind of modeling approach as common in the digital humanities domain, in the research and the digital humanities domain, in order to think about modeling. So this project, yes, is useful in order to solve our issue of managing projects created by students, but also to open this approach to more general purpose. Okay, and so another question by Fabio, maybe. Fabio
What about versioning and long-term evolution of hosted project? Have you planned anything about it? So for hosted project, I think Professor Vitali means the project inside our database. So in this case, obviously, since the repository is online on GitHub, probably the versioning maybe relies more on the GitHub interface. Then for the long-term evolution, yes, I mean, in this case, the point was to have a personal repository on GitHub in order to have control on a long-term evolution of a particular project. I mean, when someone finishes the university, maybe he's going to forget what he did 10 years before. Having all data, all projects in a particular and devoted repository let us to have control of that project in that moment. And for moment, I mean the moment of when the project was used in the exam. So let's say a single shot version of the project. Then obviously, if the project evolves in some other aspects, I don't know. It can be considered a new project if, for example, it's going to be reused for another exam, and we have some cases, or simply it's outside the university courses, and so it's not a part of our database. And in this last point, we can connect the point of having a general purpose catalog of projects. In that case, can be interesting to have a versioning platform.
Okay, there are a couple of more comments. Yes. Roberto said that there are several DH-related lab centers that might take advantage of such a tool, especially if there is also a didactic aspect to their activities. So, yes, again, to think about a general purpose tool and to rethink about your work in a more general, to a more general approach. And Marilena, for example, suggests a catalog of online projects. For example, for the whole projects, the DHarc projects are now increasing. So every day we have some more new projects that are added to the DHarc Center. So maybe also for the project of the DHarc, it could be a good solution again, so a reusable solution. Okay. So do we have any other comments or questions? Don't think so. Okay, so Fabio, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Silvio. Thank you very much, Fabio, Marilena, and Roberto for their comment. And I think that we can skip to the second project, which is by Martina Dello Buono. So I will ask Martina to enter. Ciao Martina.
Ciao, buongiorno a tutti. Good morning, everyone.
Okay, now it's your turn.
All right, it's up to me. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Martina Dello Buono. I'm a DH student, as Tomasi said, and I worked with a team composed of Claudia Bonsi, Professors Claudia Bonsi, Angelo Di Iorio, Paolo Italia, Francesca Tomasi, and Fabio Vitali, and two PhD students, Teresa Gargano and Ersilia Russo, to a brand new project by DHarc, which in reality was already existing. And this project is Philo Editor. So now I can share my screen so you can follow my description of all the functionalities of this web application. All right, maybe you can see Philo Editor. Can you see Philo Editor? Just technical problems because a loop arise. All right, maybe you can see Philo Editor now, I think. Right, you can see it, right. So thanks for everybody, thanks for watching, and thanks to all the people who worked with me and also to the staff who has organized this event. So now I'm going to show you this web application and I will show you all the functionalities. So the application is called Philo Editor, and I think that this title for this web application is very expressive, since this web application consists in an editor for doing philology online. But what does doing philology online means? I can explain just by showing Philo Editor. In fact, Philo Editor is a web platform which makes available a set of literary works. And in particular, as you can see from the home page, the currently available works on Philo Editor are Le avventure di Pinocchio and I Promessi Sposi by Alessandro Manzoni. And in particular, for these works, we have two different editions for each. So for I Promessi Sposi, we have the edition of 1825-27, the so-called Ventisettana, and also the Quarantana. And for Le avventure di Pinocchio, we have two editions, one of the 1883 edition and the edition of 1983. But what can we do with these works and in relation with the philology? As the first thing, with Philo Editor, we can read the work. Just read the full text of each of the edition of each work. A reading mode has been inserted, since we think that reading is the first step, the starting point for doing philology. So we have made available the full text of each work, of each edition of the work. So for example, I can show you an edition of I Promessi Sposi. So I've clicked on Opere and on I Promessi Sposi, and here there is a page. We have inserted a page that is between the full text and the presentation of the work, in which we can find the two different editions of I Promessi Sposi in this case. So in this card we have the Ventisettana, wow, okay, the Ventisettana and the Quarantana on the other side. So from these two cards, we can choose which edition to read. So for I Promessi Sposi Ventisettana, for example, we can start to read the introduction by means of this drop-down menu. Right, as you can see, this is the first mode. The first mode to access the text we have inserted in Philo Editor. And this is the introduction of Promessi Sposi. For example, that you can see that the text is full, so you can read the entire text, and you can also change the chapter if you want and go on reading your work. As you can see, the layout has been studied and designing for making the reading easy. In fact, it has the full screen with the text, and the text has a font bigger enough to read in an easy way. But Philo Editor does more with respect to do philology online, since it makes available Also, another mode called modalità varianti, variants mode, in which the two chosen editions of each work are presented in comparison. In fact, as you can see, the text has some, let me say, corrections inside. This is the so-called variants. In philology are called variants, which are the differences between an edition and another. So the modification that the author has done during the period of writing his work. This is possible because PhiloEditor is provided with a software, a specific software of diffing, which is able to take two texts as input and compare them and return as output the differences between these two texts. And if we move to philology field, we can say that the two editions of a text are compared and variants are returned, right? So this is so important for doing philology, since in this way the text is represented in a diachronic way, so we can see all the diachronic modification of the text. We can also shift to visualization of the variants in interlinea or in the text, as you can see, for example. All right, and we can also select the variants we want to see. For example, here there's an inserimento. These words have been inserted, and this is a deletion, in the sense that these words, più o men, have been added to the edition quarantana, when in the edition of ventisettana were not present. So if we want to show the variants, we can leave the text like it is, or if we don't want to see the variants visually, we can just use the checkbox just to see just to select, just to choose what we want to see or not. There are other kinds of tools. There's an index here for shifting the chapter. All right, for example, this is the chapter 2, also in this case in the mode variants, so the user can see all the modifications of the text, all the variants, and a bar, which is able to show you all the occurrences of a work you are searching for. And to the text are also associated the metadata. In this case, in the case of Promessi Sposi, we see that the Promessi Sposi of this chapter has been transcribed by Bonsi and Russo in this date, and these are their sources for the transcriptions, and they also marked the text in this date. Metadata are so important in the case of PhiloEditor, because we want to guarantee a scientific text, a scientific work on the text. So we want our user to know which kind of text she's going to read. And so we have put all the information necessary to guarantee that these texts have been transcribed by scholars. There's another tool, there's another mode on PhiloEditor, which is useful for scholars to do philology online. So to do something more about this text, this edition, and this new mode called the Laboratorio Lab can be used for creating your own scholarly digital edition. For accessing the lab, it is necessary to do the login. In this case, I have right now just user and password, and if you don't have it, you can sign in. And so after the login, we can use the lab mode. For example, I can see all the variants here, so I can tell something more about these variants by assigning a category to each variant or to some variants. Like, for example, I see this comma, and I can say that this comma is a variante interpuntiva, a modification in the punctuation of the text. So basically, I'm telling that this comma was not present in the 1827 edition, but is present in the 1840 edition. So it is a change that Manzoni has done on his text. And then I can save my edition just by putting some information, some data about the edition. And then the edition will be saved here in the lab. So this tool has been thought for scholars in particular, because it is a tool that can be used with high competencies in philology, but also for students for working on the text with their professors, for example, not just in the university, but also in the high school, for example, just to make the students learn how to do philology, just to get them nearer and nearer to philology. Now I want to show you some laboratories, some labs by colleagues. For example, the lab Manzoni variants by Manzoni, done by Claudia Bonsi, in which I can show you some examples of the modification that can be done on the text provided PhiloEditor in order to do philology, in order to create a personal scholarly digital edition. For example, in this case, Claudia Bonsi, Professor Claudia Bonsi, has said something more on the text by associating to each variant a specific category, and to each category is associated a color. So this lab can be used for other students to read the text, to understand something about the text, but also for scholars for doing their work on editions. Also here we have some checkbooks that can be used to show just some categories and not others. We can also modify this edition, but if we want to modify the lab, the editions by other colleagues, by other scholars, it will be impossible to save modifications of the edition of the scholar at hand, as for example these of Claudia Bonsi, but we will save the file as a new edition visible in the labs. The same for Pinocchio. Also for Pinocchio are available two different editions. And as you can see in this page, we have inserted also a briefing description about each edition. Also in this case, we have inserted this edition for students who want to use PhiloEditor, but we also inserted some information for scholars, as for example, edition criteria, in which we can find reference editions for each text and note to the text, which are information very specific and related to philology. And so in this case, they will be used for scholars. They will be used by scholars, and they are useful for guarantee that the text that we have inserted in PhiloEditor is scientific and not just a random text. Also for Pinocchio, we can decide to read the text or compare the two editions, as for example, we can compare two editions, and we will find the text of 1883 with the variants of the edition 1983. And we can choose to do like everything, to show the variants or not. So the aim of PhiloEditor is to represent the text in a different way, to represent the text in a diachronic way, to make users understand which is the process of creation of a text, and also to permit them to do philology online, to create our own edition by using the tools we have offered on the interface, in a collaborative and participating way, in a social way, because all the editions of every people will be available, and their vision of the text, their interpretative reading path, can be shared with all the other users. So these are the most important functionalities of PhiloEditor, and I think I can end with this presentation, because I show you like everything. And so thanks for watching, and I hope you have some comments and suggestions for me. Thanks. Okay.
Let's say some words. Hello, everyone. And my colleague and my students know that this is a very special day for me. I'm really happy because especially Fabio Vitali knows that this really literary adventure began 6 years ago during something like a lockdown, because in 2014 it was a very rainy summer, and we spent a lot of time locked in our house, even if it was it was summer, and we had many other things to do. So you have seen directly how PhiloEditor works, and I think that showing directly how critical edition works, philology is not frightening more everyone. Sometimes when you say philology and a philologist, you speak and you think about something really scaring and related to some specific kind and special kind of people. I think that showing directly how a text like Le Betrothed, Promessi Sposi, and Le Avventure di Pinocchio works, philology seems to be something really different, something through which we can understand the life of texts, and to understand that texts are some human beings. They have a birth, they have their youth, and they develop during their growing. And we can understand also the really importance to consider the differences in an historical aspect, in the historical perspective. And I think that nowadays we are dealing with great challenges of historical way of thinking, and the possibility to see how different texts were in different times may us enhance our critical perception of reality. Two things about digital edition and the critical edition. There have been great changes sharing the digital environment for philology. First of all, the variability of text, and then collaborative text. But especially during the sharing of the digital environment, we have enhanced diplomatic editions and not critical one. I think that this project and the Vasto project we will deal later show that it depends, it's only up to us. It depends on our willing to use all the possibilities of the digital environment. And especially for PhiloEditor, we have proved, we have shown that we can use all the possibility not only to read text and to understand their variability, but also to make something more, make a real interpretation of text. At the beginning, Philo Editor was only a way to compare text. We have proved also to make something more, to try to understand all the different linguistic categories, and something really, really, from my point of view, really interesting, just to understand how authors create their works, how they begin to change their text, if they make a deletion and insertion, and if they change places of things and of words. So this is a really great field of development. I would like to thank Francesca, first of all, because without Francesca Tomasi, Philo Editor would have never been realized, but also all the students who have make collations between 27 and 40. Probably many of them are seeing directly this webinar, and they are saying, oh, what was boring to compare Manzoni's work, but probably for some of them it has been a new experience and a new way to read the text that most of students don't like particularly, and they consider something like a monument to be destroyed and not to be understood. Another point is the specific collaborative edition. The Philo Editor has been something like a collaborative and social edition. Many students have made collation and made the coding in XML. I want to thank Claudia Bonsi. I want to thank Beatrice Nava, who helped me to organize all the works of all the students, but and especially Angelo Di Iorio, who with Fabio Vitali worked with us and wrote with us 2 papers, which were the basis of our reflection, scientific reflection, but also Ersilia Russa and Teresa Gargano, who recently devoted their PhD thesis on Philo Editor and idiomatic form for Ersilia and Pinocchio. You probably during our discussion we can deal with specific aspects and development of our project, because as you can see it may be used also in the secondary school, but also in the primary school, especially for Pinocchio. It has many aspects which has also a pedagogical possibility to be used. Fabio, something to tell us about the technical part, because he invented Philo Editor. He is the father of Philo Editor, and so I would like you to explain something.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? So yes, thank you, Paola. Thank you, Martina. This is, I would say, the 6th or the 7th step of a 5 years long activity in the idea of applying specific technical tools I'll be talking about in a minute to the field of philology. From my point of view, this has been really a kind of a roller coaster trip between 2 very different types of interests. On the one hand, the reason we started out of, which was to provide the philologist a tool to create and enhance digital edition coming from the editions coming from the comparison between different sources, and on the other hand, a way for the same philologist to show off the results of this activity to interested people, to an audience, maybe to a classroom of students and so on. So at the same time, the tool for the philologists to work with the editions, and the tool to let casual readers or interested students to access the output of the work and read them. And over time, these two fairly different in many ways, especially from the technical point of view, these two approaches came into prominence, became visible according to the specific needs and the specific projects the Philo Editor tool was involved with, and so on. So very clearly, the first prototype that I created myself on my own in this very rainy summer of 2014, where I was locked in my mountain house for a month without being able to get out of the house because of the mud and the rain all over. So that was very clearly a tool for the philologists to work with editions. And the idea was to take a versioning tool, let it compare two specific versions of an arbitrary text and represent the differences in a way that then, this was one of the fields I was interested in, is the so-called coloring of annotations. That is the idea that you have pieces of text and you want to identify them and give them a label, a color if you want, that describes the reasonings, the semantics, the justifications, the purpose, the nature of these fragments. And this would be applied very easily and very naturally to the differences between two versions of the same text, especially because particularly Manzoni actually made modifications not just because, but for a very specific number of very precise reasons. This is not my dog.
It's mine.
Okay. So very specific reasons and so on. So creating a set of tools that would allow the philologist to identify the differences. By the way, versioning tools, diffing tools, tools that create differences between texts are not particularly precise to identify exactly the conceptual or semantic boundaries between differences. So sometimes you would have very different modifications clumped together because they happen very nearby. For instance, a difference in the selection of words and the difference in the selection of punctuation that have different reasonings behind would be put together in a single modification. And sometimes you would have conceptually very connected modifications that would be separated. And so it would have to the tool would have to let the philologist reorganize and modify these modifications and then color them, apply specific labels and justifications to them. And this was the original tool, the purpose of the original tool. And then, of course, the interest that this created on a number of people, including mainly Paola and Francesca, made it very clear that the presentation aspect of the tool wasn't up to the task, and therefore a number of additional services were added so that this would let not only the philologist who could work with the very simple interface that would be made available, but for other users, other readers to access this data, and therefore being able to show the result. And now I think that after 5 years of evolutions in both directions, I think that thanks to Martina's effort, we now have a mature tool that is ready for allowing arbitrary works to be presented after the philologist has created his own annotations and commentaries over any edition. But at the same time, behind the scenes, still there is an editing tool that allows the same philologist to add new works, to compare them, to edit and improve on the comparisons made by the automatic tool, which is not very bright, and then to color it, to describe it, to improve it, and to enhance the quality, both in terms of the semantics and in terms of the purpose and so on, of the various fragments of the text. So I think now PhiloEditor is turning into a major tool that can be applied to a very large number of situations. And Martina has shown in the last 3 or 4 months the ability and the maturity to turn the very, very bare-bone type of software that my aesthetical and my artistical weaknesses can create into a mature and modern and usable and mainly useful tool for everybody to be used.
Thank you, Fabio. Let me say my thanks and congratulations to Martina and to all of the students of the HDK, because in all this project during this webinar, they have proved an aptitude for research, which means not only to be able to apply something you have learned previously, but also to share with others, and to work in team, which is really, really difficult. And especially for Martina and Valentina, they have proved to be capable to share that knowledge with in different fields. And this project proved also the possibility to work together from different fields and to share multidisciplinary projects, which is PhiloEditor is one of them, proving during these months the ability to solve one problem after another, and to develop the state of mind of patience, happiness, and willing to solve every problem every day. So thank you a lot, Martina.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Oh, you can't hear me. Right. Thanks, Paola. Thanks, Fabio. And thanks also, Francesca, and everyone in the team.
We cannot hear you. Okay.
What? Now?
Okay, yes. I think that there are some questions. So some of them maybe you have already replied to, but let's have a look just in order to share some point. So Roberto, for example. Oh no, Silvio, sorry, Silvio. Yes, Silvio is asking the possibility to have an interface in other languages.
All right. Do you mean an interface shifting between a shift between English to Italian for the old interface? Do you mean this, or do you mean maybe text in literary text in?
I think Silvio is asking about the architecture, not the text.
All right. For now, this functionality has not been developed, but I think it can be easy to do it just by adding some code, some lines of code, and organizing the interface, the contents of the interface in a way that we can shift the language from Italian to other language, I think. Thanks.
Okay, Roberto, the first question of Roberto, I think that Paola has partially replied to, but if you want something, if you want Martina to add something, the collaborative approach. So this is the first question. So the possibility to save your own edition. So the previous question by Roberto. Sorry, guys.
From my side, Philo Editor is not. It has been a collaborative edition, but now the edition is finished, is closed. What you can do in a collaborative form is to make an interpretation of text, and you have 37 chapters left just to be studied and to be noticed, and so I should make a difference between a collaborative edition and a collaborative interpretation, also because we are comparing it to a print version, 27 and 40, and we provide a reliable text and the comparison between the two print version. So also for L'Avventura di Pinocchio, it's the same. But in a collaborative form, you can make an interpretation of text, and by means the login, you can work on the text, and you can share in a classroom with the students and so on. So
I think that the most important stuff that you have managed, Fabio before and then Martina, is to give the possibility to save your own laboratory. So to enter, to produce your own annotation, and to save your own digital edition. So this is a quite important stuff, I think. And then Roberto had another question.
Just 1 minute. I would like to add something to what Paula says. I think we should distinguish it. It's important to distinguish between Philo Editor as the tool to represent a specific point of view on the 27 and 40 by Alessandro Manzoni, as collected and prepared for this purpose, and the tool Philo Editor, which can allow any pair of works connected together, compare them, and evaluate and process them. And therefore, of course, Philo Editor as the edition for Manzoni is a complete package, but Philo Editor also exists as an empty box that you can fill in with your own works and use for your own purposes. So yes, of course, it is possible. And also another thing that was added over time was the ability to create multiple different and independent evaluations and enhancement of the same basic text document, so that you can have different classrooms editing and enhancing in different ways the same works. This has been added over time, and it's now a stable feature of the tool. So even over the same source documents from 27 and 40 by Manzoni, you can create your own interpretation and your own versions of the same documents.
Sure. The second question of Roberto is quite important, because Martina has created a specific page for the technical description of the software and the possibility to realize as open source. So Martina, if you want to add something to this point.
Yes, in the website you will find in the footer all the documentation of the project, including the part about the technologies used, and it's going to be as open source, and you will find all the information. And I think this software that we have used for versioning in particular is already an open source software. So the software used for versioning is yet open source. Thanks.
Correct.
Fabio,
it has always been open source in terms of the actual license, but what is next? Our next step is to actually place it on some kind of open source, well-known platforms such as GitHub or something like that, in order for you to be able to access. Right now, if you have to send an email to me and I will deliver it to you. But this is the next step, is to actually release it on some well-known platforms.
Okay, thank you, Fabio. Let's move to Elena comment on PhiloEditor and her request about categories. So Elena is telling us that it's nice, this kind of merging of functions.
Right. The variance categories are not editable for now, because you can just use the categories we have inserted in PhiloEditor, so you can assign one of the categories that are available for now. But it is a very interesting functionalities that we can maybe add in the future. I think for me it's a very interesting thing. So thanks.
Okay.
Elena, the categories are placed, you cannot directly edit the categories within the tool, but they are placed in a source file that you can edit. It's a JSON file, so by modifying this JSON document, you can simply have the new set of variants. It's something more of a technical aspect, so there is no direct interface to edit that, but they are not hardwired within the code. They can be modified and become something different.
Yes, I can add the thing about it. We changed some categories from the version of PhiloEditor 6.5 to this website, to this version of the website. So we have changed the names of the categories and the colors, also the colors, but in the backend. So not only on the interface. Yes.
I can add that it was a really difficult to choose specific categories and to recognize them in the text, and this aspect was the most difficult one, because in the interpretation you have to deal with Italian literature, linguistics, the study of the content of the text, the study of the dictionaries. So we and I thank specifically Claudia Bonsi, because she made the categories and the work for the chapter number 1. I think that it may be a good starting point, because making the annotation we understand something more, and we can improve our categories, adding and making the annotation better. Thank you.
Okay, I saw that Roberto is asking for some more technical aspect, for example, the model for TI, the server-side services, and so on. Just for a question of time, Robbie, I think that we can have a separate talk and to discuss about some stuff, because we come back to you at the very final of this day, so don't worry that we will have time to discuss more about all the different stuff.
I have hours of things to say about the technical aspects of this tool. So yes, I can fill in the whole day.
Okay, we will manage to organize a specific discussion on this point when we will be able to do it with Roberto and with other people interested in adding in depth to this point. Roberto is caring. Are you caring, Fabio, Roberto? Okay, so thank you very much, Martina. Wonderful job. Thank you, Paolo and Fabio, for your time. And we can move to the next project, which is by Sebastian. But again, it's related to my really big love.
Good morning, everyone.
Teaching.
Okay, thank you, Francesca. Thank you, everyone, and especially thank you to my colleagues, because they actually will help me with their presentation to make my point across. So I'll try to share the screen. Okay. Okay. So you should be seeing what I see, and I will start my presentation. So this presentation will be about the concept of reproducibility. So the big idea is that reproducibility, it's the basically the capability of someone, for example, a researcher, to replicate the scientific findings of other scholars, other researchers. And it means, of course, by scientific findings, I mean the result of a research or a project in this case. And reproducibility, it's really, really important because it actually allows a project, a research, a result to be some kind of authoritative in a way. And we can safely say that something is scientific if it can be replicated, if it can be reproduced. However, there is a problem, there is a crisis, an actual crisis in reproducibility. And don't make mistakes. This crisis exists across all the human knowledge possible. Here we will focus on humanities, but there is a reproducibility crisis in hard sciences, in social sciences, and so on. What about humanities? Due to the time, I don't have many. I don't have much time to explain all the complexities of this discourse, but I actually advise you to take a look at the article called Replicability and Replication in the Humanities. It's really, really interesting. And basically, there are some misconceptions about humanities and the reproducibility, the idea of reproducibility in humanities, about the fact that the humanities deal with unique objects, while the hard sciences deal with multiple instances of those objects. The misconception about the fact that humanities objects are characterized by intrinsic meaning and values, and the fact that humanities have unsuitable methods to allow reproducibility. These are all misconceptions according to Peels, and I actually agree with him. So, the objectives of reproducibility are interesting to us because this is what basically digital humanities is about. Our research allows for new questions to arise and allows us to revive existing debates in the humanities. Of course, in order to be able to do that, we need transparent data, we need open data, we need precise definitions, we need descriptions of what we have done during the research, during the study, during the development of a project. We need, of course, related to the idea of open data, we need the raw data. We need to have access to it. And we also need a step-by-step analysis, explanation of what has been done with that data. And this is why I'm saying that my colleagues actually helped me talk about this, because as you have seen, both the DHarc and the Philo Editor and other projects as well have been done with this in mind. So, a premise. Of course, I am confident in saying that it is interesting to explore the possibilities offered by computational thinking, tools, and methods with respect to humanities research, because this is what digital humanities is, at least half of it. And I like to think that we can apply reproducibility in the research of humanities through digital humanities tools, and vice versa. And this is interesting to us because it allows us to put our research on a solid epistemic ground. and also to create new research, to create new projects starting from existing ones, etc., etc. And my idea is that part of reproducibility is allowed by access and documentation. Especially documentation should be about the workflow, how the study or the project was born, designed and developed, about the structure, the content, and ultimately the data, what is based on. And I will put forward an actual example of this idea, which is represented by this project called Vespasiano da Bisticci's Letters. So it is, of course, a digital editions of this work. So the work itself, the letters, are a series of manuscript letters sent to and received by Vespasiano da Bisticci, an Italian humanist and librarian who lived in the Renaissance. And the content of these letters focus on manuscript, on trade of manuscripts and codices with other notable people of his time, especially nobles. And they contains a lot of interesting information from the point of the text itself and the paratextual information surrounding it. And this information has been published at first on a digital edition that was conceived as a constantly developing archive, working on thematic facets that allows for navigation by categories, enriched with philological tools that allows you to be guided through the various contents of these letters. It also contains analysis of the context surrounding those letters, and ultimately it explains the markup model, the TI markup model that has been used for encoding such letters. Example of the digital editions is this. This was the digital edition of the 2013. And now I am going forward, and then the knowledge site was created. For knowledge site, we mean the semantic digital edition, which takes the digital edition done before to a new level by using a series of libraries, and especially by injecting it with semantic technologies. In particular, we now have an RDF dataset containing a series of RDF statements about the letters. And this is all fine. It is a really good project. This is an example of it, and it's really beautiful and it works really well. However, I had to work with this basically, and the problem was the fact that there are some explanations in this project, but ultimately, how has it been developed? What if I want to replicate it? What if I want to produce a similar work, conduct a similar studies, make a knowledge site, make a semantic digital edition myself by using the model on which this project is allowing to exist? And this is when I come in, basically. What I did was to create a posterior documentation for this whole project. And I focused on 3 main points. The first point is the methodology. I wanted to make it clear how the project was born. So I focused on the workflow, the development workflow of the project. And since we are dealing with semantic technologies, we are dealing with an RDF dataset, it is also necessary to state the list of reused models. Then we have the components section. The documentation also focuses on what is the RDF dataset, what it is about, how it is structured. And it is not a particularly big dataset, but its structure it is not immediately clear. It's not immediately so linear. It is done very well, but it needs explanation. And in order to make a clear explanation of it, I decided to break it down into a series of smaller models that I will show you. And finally, since it is also important to illustrate the nature of the data, I thought that it is extremely interesting to try out data visualization techniques in order to enrich the documentation and make it more clear, especially to non-technical people. So the first step of the documentation was the methodology. All my documentation is stored in a website that I will show you, of course. And it's this. Yes. So as you can see here all the various categories that I already told you about. And basically what I did was to, first of all, retrace the workflow of the whole project. We start with the markup model, and I describe how the ad hoc markup model was used to mark up the letters in TI format. Then we go to the conversion in HTML. Basically the letters were marked up in TI and then were converted into HTML documents. And finally, we have the RDF conversion. So the letters are still HTML documents, and all the statements or the RDF statements that we have in the dataset have been extracted from the letters, from the context around them, and through the use of an XSLT style sheet. And this allows us to basically have what we have right now. And finally, we have a list of reused models with a brief explanation of what they are. Everything is accurately linked, and this is important. I think that this kind of work needs balance. Of course, it requires a bit of common sense and a bit of trial and error. In this case, I wanted to describe the underlying models, and I think that you cannot take anything for granted. So I briefly talk about the most used models, which are the SPAR ontologies and the Ferber model. And since I don't want to take anything for granted, I also briefly describe how the Ferber models work, because this is with an example directly from the letters, because this needs to be as open and accessible as possible. And at the same time, it needs to be easily digestible for everyone. So it's really a work of balance, I think. Then we have the section of the components. So in order to do that, as I told you, I needed to take the RDF dataset and thoroughly study it and analyze it and break it down and visualize it by using Graphu, a really nice tool to allow to have a visualization of how the dataset behaves. This is just an example of a small modelet of the dataset, but of course there are many more. I think they are 16, and I have put everything, every single one, with accompanied by a true explanation of each one of it, because it needs to be clear to both the technical people and to the non-technical people what this all means. And finally, we have the visualization part. So about the visualization, first of all, I think that it needs to be stated many and many times, even if it may be apparently obvious, but visualization is based on the type of data that you have and on what you want to do, basically, what you want to make it clear. So we have a lot of data with which we have these paratextual statements in RDF about the letters. And we have this data, of course, is really rich from a semantic point of view, and we can visualize it in many ways. For example, we can use a flat index, and it is actually useful to start by it and to navigate more easily in the data, but it's not visual. It's per se, it's not visual. We, of course, as you all know, we tend to be really visual creatures. So this is when the actual techniques and practices from data visualization come in handy. Data visualization is really used in statistics, in hard science in general, and in data journalism. So because it's of course really useful and effective. So why not using it in our projects as well? Because it's understandable to think that maybe humanities projects are not made for these things, but I think that is highly debatable. So with visualization, I choose to move following 4 main coordinates: the what, the when, the where, and the who. So I'll show you. First of all, to the what. As an example, I chose 2 examples basically. The components, the main components of the dataset, in order to have an immediate idea of what the dataset consists in, and of a subset of the most present, of the most numerous class of the dataset. And I used these 2 little guys here. So I will show you the live version as well. It's this. And the visualization here is based on the pie chart and the donut chart. Now, it's important to say this. In data visualization, in visualization in general, the choice of the chart of the tool is extremely important. And as many people may agree or may not agree, that know about how pie chart and donut chart work, they are really tricky. I've seen research papers using this kind of visualization in a way that is debatable. And I'm sure that all of you have seen the same thing in, for example, in the newspaper. Why? Because it is really easy to manipulate the way a person perceives the data. It's really easy to perceive the data visually, but it's also extremely easy to be tricked by it. And so I chose to use them just with few categories, because that's when the pie chart and the donut chart are really good about. These show the fundamentally the most used classes in the dataset. And as you can see immediately, the Doco text chunk is the way most used class in the dataset. While this pie chart here shows the 5 most present types of the text chunk. And again, as you can see here, we have a lot of attested names, text chunks that basically are are names of people. And then to represent the what in the dataset, I decided to also use the bar chart like this. And basically, this represents the number of lexical forms, this, per letter. And again, this kind of visualization is really handy because if you have to represent a nominal comparison, frequencies and stuff like that, these are good for few categories. But when you have a number of a certain number of things that you want to compare, the bar chart is much, much, much better. And again, you can immediately see that this letter has much more lexical forms than the other ones. It is immediate and it is really useful to know. Then we move to the where. Of course, the immediate type of chart that comes to mind is the map. And as an example, I use the places of dispatch, which are the places from which the letters have been sent. And I've decided to not really overdo it, because even as the idea of a map, it might be apparently really intuitive and easy to know, but there are a lot of different types of map chart. And as a rule of thumb, I always think that personally you don't need to overdo what you are trying to do. So for example, at first I tried to create a bubble map. But given the few number of places in the dataset, and given that a lot of these places are really, really close to each other, the bubble map would be a kind of overkill. It would defeat its own purpose to make the data be clearer in an immediate way. So I decided to do a really simple visualization that allows us to understand the places, the number of letters that have been sent from these places, and the actual titles, the actual identifiers of the letters themselves. Then we move to the when coordinate. And of course, I decided as an example to visualize the dates of dispatch, so the dates in which the letters have been sent. Again, go to the live version. And this time, of course, I used a timeline. So this timeline, as you can see, this timeline is really compressed because the interval of time between the first letter that has been sent and the last one is really, it's really small. But of course, I think that visualization needs to be clear and needs to be as much clear as someone wants. So implemented the possibility to interact with it and to see much clearer when each letter has been sent. So as you can see, many of them have a definite date. They are represented as points, as instants in time, and those few that are not represented as that because they have an uncertain date to them. So I decided to represent them as an interval of time because we are not sure when this letter has been sent, for example. And finally, we have the visualization about the who coordinate, the people. And in this case, I decided to visualize the correspondence of the letters and the people who has been cited on the letters. So for the first ones, I decided to use again a bar chart. The bar chart is a really simple yet strong tools to visualize stuff. And as you can see, without any kind of query, SparkQL query on the data set, we can immediately see who are those who who've written the most to Vespasiano. Giannozzo Manetti is immediately visible as the most active correspondent of them all, and so on and so forth. And while for the cited people, I decided to use a form of network graph, which is this. This is called the arc diagram. Why is that? Basically, at first, I wanted to represent the idea of someone that cites someone else as a network. This is nothing new. This is actually the most common way to represent this kind of concept. But it turned out that by using a classic network, I would lose the idea of ordered list of letters. Each letter is identified by a number, and this is in an ascending order. So we have the letter 1, letter 2, letter 3, and so forth. And I wanted to maintain that idea. So in the end, I decided to still use a network, but a special kind of network, which is, as I told you, the arc diagram. And through this visualization, is immediately possible to see the 4 most cited people in the data set, which are Vespasiano, Alfonso II d'Aragona, Ferdinando I d'Aragona, and Giannozzo Manetti. And each single letter that in which they have been cited. So, of course, there was a problem in terms of space available, but I'm sure that with enough time, with enough study, with enough design, anything is possible. So it is also possible to devise a way to visualize this one better. So, to wrap it up, reproducibility, it's absolutely possible in the humanities. And as you can have already seen, especially in the previous project that my colleagues have already presented, and it's something that we should pursue along with other ideas like open science and open licensing and stuff like that. We need to explain our methods. I really can't count the number of projects, the number of software, the number of anything related to a project, a study, a research, in which the methods are not explained, or they are explained in a way that only the people who written it actually can understand. At the same time, the less technical people need to increase their familiarity with practices, because we need, as I was telling you before, we need to find a balance between the two. Then, branching outside both the computational science and the humanistic science, we need that the scholars, which are us basically, we need to be clear with also normal audiences that are not specialized in neither digital humanities, neither in computer science, nor in humanities. And we need to make our research reproducible and transparent, as I told you many and many times by now. And personally, I think that documenting properly your work is part of the solution. And this is, ideally, this work should be done, should be embedded in your research. While you are doing your project, you should document it. It shouldn't be something that must be done at the end. Of course, this project was an exception, but ideally, we have to find methods to embed these practices in our work without making it look and feel like a chore. So something that bores us, something that is really heavy on us. So thank you for your attention, and I'm open to any question. Okay. I'm here.
Hi, Sebastian.
Hi, everyone.
Do you want to say something, Francesca, or you want me to say something?
Oh, Mari, let's start with, we are a little bit late, but okay, it's not an issue.
Sorry.
So I work so much on Vespasiano, and Marilena do a lot really of stuff, so I ask Marilena to say something.
No, just a couple of considerations on the work that Sebastian did. Of course, I believe it's very important. And as a matter of fact, as Sebastian highlighted, when you handle a research project, you start with great ideas, and then you try to achieve the most as you can, but then you might not have the time to show properly what you have done. And unfortunately, this is a common pattern in research. And this is mainly because, as you might testify, it's very time consuming, and it's a very expensive task to reproduce everything and document everything. So you try to do it while you're doing your research, but then you know that at some point you will need to wrap up everything and make it understandable to other people. And this is one aspect that I consider really valuable in your work, because you did it properly. Like, you did it for everybody, not just for the technical people, and you did it also for us, so that if we decide to continue this work and to extend it and so on, we have everything now. So it will be easier the next time to continue this work. And this is a very important thing, because as we know, there are a lot of products in the digital products that become obsolescent like really easily. And a project that is not documented and it's not reproducible will never be used by anybody. First, from the same people that did it because they don't remember how to do it again. And second, nobody will build on top of it because they need explanations, as you said. And the explanation regards all the bits of the project, like from the modeling to the reproducibility of the application, to the reuse of the data. So also the fairness of both applications and data that you create. And this is one thing. And then the second very expensive task that you had to deal with was the visualization. That it's not merely, I will show something just so that people know what it's about. So I will put some graphs and people will understand it. This is something that is very important to me, that is, usually these projects, as I said, end up in producing something and telling people, look, people, we did this, please now use it and discover something new. This usually doesn't work because what somebody may call the open data business model is based on this opportunity that you give to people to reuse open data as they want. The point is that people don't know how to do it most of the time because of technical barriers, or because they don't have enough documentation to understand what they can do immediately. And visualization in this sense is a very powerful means, so that people that want to reuse your work can immediately understand what is inside. And from those visualization, I ended up having new research questions. So I might want to contribute to your project, I might want to reuse what you have done so far, build on top of it, and eventually enhance it. So I think that every project should have this since the beginning, of course. So people, researchers should get used to do what you have done. And I really appreciated that you did it in a very structured way. So it's a good model for other people that want to do the same, I think, in the future.
Thank you, Marilena.
Yes, I completely agree with Marilena, because the point was Marilena did a very great job on this transformation of what is an original semantic digital edition into a real knowledge site. So she did a really wonderful job in order to transform this starting digital edition into something strictly connected with the notion of knowledge. And the point was exactly to give the real meaning of this work through a documentation that, as Marilena said, enable any kind of user to understand the methodology that we have decided to use in order to give the real expressivity of the content of a digital edition. And I strongly believe that the visualization and the data visualization or the data-driven activity is really important to let the interpretation, so the hermeneutics, to born out, and so to be really explicit in documenting the triple store, and to let the real role of ontology used in order to let the knowledge really to emerge, not just for the machine, as the linked data are mostly used, but also for the final user, and to let latent knowledge to be expressed also through a visualization approach that lets the interpretation to emerge. Okay, I just moved to questions, if there are any. So thank you very much, Sebastian, for your job.
Thank you.
Elena.
Roberto has a question.
Elena, I agree, useful project. Maybe Roberto. Thank you, Sebastian and Marilena. I have a question. Okay. Bit side related. Okay. So let's listen for the question by Roberto.
I don't know if he's typing it.
I don't know if there are any other curiosity or questions or comments on this project. Okay, Roberto. Roberto said that it would be interesting to start adding this kind of information directly inside PI documents before translating it in RDF. Do you think it could be done with the current TI schemas?
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I think this relates. I think it can be done. I admit that I still haven't looked that much into this kind of things. I think that it is possible. If it's not possible, it absolutely should be. And I think that this relates to something that digital humanities researchers and computer scientists might have in common. That is the dreaded idea of documenting code, documenting software. This interest in documentation should be applied to both the world. When of course, this presentation was focused on the digital semantic digital editions, but of course, it can be extended to any kind of project that is digital, has a digital nature. And I think that TI, if has not considered this kind of thing, but I'm pretty sure that it is possible with the current TI schemas. It should be considered. It should be implemented immediately. And I highly advise any kind of project to do this kind of thing, being it in TI or not. Even if it's like, I don't know, a Python-based software, it should be documented. We need comments on code to understand what you have done. We need to have it clear in order to modify that code, in order to create something new every time, or in order to verify the validity of what you have done. Why not?
Maybe Marilena, have you something to add? Because yeah, just a quick point, and then maybe Marilena will have something more detailed than me to say. But the main point of the creation of knowledge site, it was skipping from XML/TI. I mean, to try to work directly inside an HTML document and to add an HTML document, enrich an HTML document without taking particularly care to the XML/TI. I mean, the XML/TI was the very first activity of the 2013 work. And by doing this new project, we started directly by focusing on the enrichment of the HTML document. I don't know if Marilena has something to add, maybe.
I'm a bit puzzled. I'm thinking what is Roberto asking is what kind of information you think should be included in the TI? Because if I think about the things that Sebastian talked about, so the method to develop the application, what he called the components, that in the end is the model and the visualization, I'm thinking that from a coherence point of view, I don't know if it should be in the XML/TI. The XML/TI regards the edition, and the application that we did is one of the possible applications that somebody may want to do. Of course, there might be bibliographic reference of the online edition, that's for sure. Just to say that text is represented in a digital format somewhere. For what concerns the model, I might agree. So there should be a way to represent it in TI. It's a bit artificious, I might say. We tried it with another project that we did with Francesca Tomasi and with Francesca Giovannetti, that is the Paolo Buffalini's notebook. So we tried to embed information about the model in the TI, but still, I believe that's not correct, because this is just one of the possible interpretations that you can give to the text. So somebody may want to reuse it, so it would be good to have it there, because at least you have one of the possible representations that you want to give to the text, formal representation. But on the other side, somebody may want just to reuse the raw XML TI just to extract names and reconcile them to DBpedia. So maybe it's not that worth it to make all this effort in the TI side. So the TI, I think, should deal with the text. And that's it. Whatever is around should be somewhere else. This is just my 2 cents. And for what concerns the visualization, of course, the original data that we use for the visualization are in the TI XML. So, and then transformed in HTML. So to some extent, those information are already there, like the citations, the people, the places, and so on. Of course, it's harder to query it because you need to use XML-based languages and so on, while in this case, I think it was easier for Sebastian to do it straightforward with JavaScript. So
yeah,
that was much easier rather than using XQuery or XSLT in order to get all the links that you wanted. So if this person is mentioned in this letter and then in this other letter, then combine them and see what are the groups. I see there is another question.
Yes, Francesca. Yes, I want to add, in the meantime, Sebastian can read Francesca's question and Marilena as well, that maybe the point that Marilena has already stressed on it was the XML TI is a method for describing some kind of stuff and to visualize the digital edition in a very traditional way, just in order to let scholar able to read the document and to enhance the different topics that in the model that you have chosen in order to describe features of the edition you want to read as a scholar. And the link data are for extracting information and to connect that kind of information with the clouds. So maybe, and to create data-driven visualization method. So I think it's also a question of roles. So it's not just a question of technology, but the technology is strictly related to the role of your interpretation on data. Okay, so Sebastian or Mari, something to add to?
Can I just say something about Roberto's question, because he specified in a comment what he was talking about.
Okay.
Exactly this one. So
yes.
Just to conclude this conversation,
yes.
I think, yes, it's what we did with the other project that I mentioned before, the Paolo Buffalini's notebook. So for example, we were trying to encode in the metadata this kind of relationships. Yeah. And we were using, it was a bit of a trick, I might say, because we embedded somehow the ontology in the TI encoded text. And in a dedicated section, we were describing the relationships, like, for example, saying, this is the case of Paolo Buffalini, not Vespasiano, of course. We said, I don't know, Paolo Buffalini is mentioning another author that I don't remember, and this author is commenting about the influence of Schopenhauer on Nietzsche. And he was mentioning, he was quoting this other author, so that his statement could support his interpretation about the relationship between the other two authors and so on. So we hard-coded somehow this information in the TI so that it was there and we could reuse it as it is for the transformation, also because it was very difficult to embed it in the proper text. So we made it in a tripod fashion, let's say. So yeah, but I think TI might start thinking about this. The TI community should start thinking about this, because you might want to make your interpretations more explicit in the TI, in the XML, and eventually reuse it as you want later. But there should be means to describe it. Like there are ways to describe people. For example, there is the way to embed authorities, but the possibility to say in a very expressive way what are the relations is still a bit lacking. And
Okay.
Just to close this topic.
Okay, I don't know. I think that we can stop the discussion here. Sorry, but just because a question of time, so we are a little bit late, and I want to leave also a sort of open discussion at the very end of the presentation. So thank you very much, Sebastian, and thank you, Maria, for your time. And we move to the very last presentation, and then we open the discussion. So I ask Valentina Pasquale to enter in order to present the VAST project. So Valentina, for you.
Thank you. Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay, great. So I prepared, can you see it? So I prepared a sort of little presentation, and I'm going to present VAST project, which means DHarc Storia Fiorentina, and this is the part of the digital edition, and I want to show you our workflow and the approach to the implementation. So Progetto Vasto is first of all a collaborative edition, as Paola Italia said previously, because there were a lot of people working on it with different kind of interest in the application. So Paola Italia and Francesca Tommasi, along with Dario Brancato, were the first main part of the project, and then me, Elena Corbellini, were the implementation part, along with Roberta and Daniela Santoro for the encoding part. So VAST project can be still considered as an ongoing project, because we developed the pilot program of Storia Fiorentina of the RC for witness. But the objective of our project is that we want to set the interface to easily update the whole edition. And I want also to mention that Dario Brancato was the philologist, one of the main experts of Varchi and the Storia Fiorentina, and he made the philological analysis of the work. So they will continue to work on this and just adding other parts and other witnesses to make this work like huge. So we need to establish a standard and a methodological approach, to make everyone collaborate and also to pursue our objectives. So the first thing we did is the analysis of the philological case, that what we want to represent and especially what features we want to represent in our digital edition. So we just talked with Dario, that explained us the context of Storia Fiorentina, which is made by Benedetto Varchi at Corte dei Medici, and it has an analytic nature, like it talks about the history of Florence in an arc of 10 years. And later then it has been censorship by Baccio Baldini. So these are the main aspects Dario was working on. And so then it comes to facing the technical aspect, like how to translate the philological case into an interface, into something that a reader can easily read and understand. So we established a sort of workflow for each of the things we developed. And the first thing we did is the analysis of the input. We just show up the materials we had, like the facsimile of Storia Fiorentina provided by Dario and his transcription, along with his philological analysis. So we just established some representational requirements, which is just a sort of list of the things we want to pursue in our output. And then we start to thinking as a sort of theoretical reflection on what we want really to show to the user. So how to satisfy the representational requirements. So we thought about to build something or just reuse it, and how to encode the text, also for further developments, also for just create more tools for Vasto platform, and which kind of visualization tools were good for our purposes. And we chose EvoT2, which is a software to visualize digital editions. In EvoT2, you have the possibility to visualize both critical and diplomatic edition. So the output is exactly the digital edition visualization. So we just work on Vasto, focusing on 3 levels. The first one was the transition features. So looking at the text and what Dario studied on the text, we create a sort of knowledge site where we want to extract people, places, and dates, or at least show them in the interface. Then we work on the diplomatic edition, where our focus was on the stratigraphy of the text. So I said that the text was censorship, and also I have to say that the text was composed by multiple hands. So we want to stress on this point and show the additions and deletions made by these hands. And last, we work on the critical edition, where Dario focused most on the distinction between the author's last will and the text after the censorship. So we want also to optimize the text for the readability. Then, so why we choose EvoT Beta 2 for Vasto is that it was a quite general interface and software to just show up our philological case. So the implementation phase was on modifying some of the files you can find on EvoT Beta 2, and like the CSS, the XML, and the JSON file were the 3 main modified files. And also we made some quick adjustments for our purposes in the JSON one, exactly for the same output we wanted. So pros and cons of reuse a tool that already exists is that, first of all, EvoT Beta 2 is an open source, and it's of course it's robust. We can say that it has been tested multiple times, and for this reason it's also time saving, and it has also a high level of customization. And in the folder you can just download from their site, you have so many examples to just build your edition. There are so many functionalities, and we had the possibility to communicate with the EvoT development team. But still, they just the already online version is EvoT Beta 1, and for our purposes, they just gave us EvoT Beta 2 to work on it. So it's still under development, and it will be released in, I think, a short times. So considering that it's still under development, there are few bugs and the documentation is still incomplete. But it was interesting in facing also this, trying to work with them and seeing what's going on in there. So it was quite interesting as a work, also working on a still under development platform. So I want to show the 3 levels, what we did for the 3 levels. So the first one was the transition workflow, and we just consider the analytic nature of Storia Fiorentina, describing a lot of people, places, and events. So we want to detect and extract, and for sure visualize this data. The implementation was quite simple because EvoT was doing it by itself, so almost we didn't need any customization. We just encode the XML TI with the first name and a place for the name entities and the dates. And the result is that we have 2 kind of possibilities that I will show. And the thing is important that someone will go on with this project and will work also on maps, timelines, and probably indexes of people or networks. So this is just a starting point, the encoding with first name, places, and dates to make these new tools later on. So the first thing is that EVT enables an index of people and places, as you can see. Okay, the list of places and people. So you can have additional information about it, and then you can see it also in the addition, in the visualization, where you can inside the text just select the things you want to see and having new information about them. I will show you later on the application directly. And for the second level, on the diplomatic edition workflow, we want to, as I said, work on the stratigraphic text. So the hands that work on Storia Fiorentina was 4, and the first one is by the copyist, that is Bonsi, then some editions by the creator, which is Varchi, and the censorship by Baccio Baldini. And this is actually another unidentified hand that worked on it. Also by Darius Will, we just also wanted to work on abbreviations in the diplomatic edition, so they are represented in bold and italic. So the representational requirements were actually that we want to show the facsimile and the transcription possibly together and see the diachronic representation of the text. The implementation thing was made by the XML again, so using del tag and alt tag along with place and hand. The interesting thing is that in the manuscript, most of the additions are in the margin of the page. So we want to also describe this in our visualization. And so we need to customize the CSS, and because EVT2 has no possibility to show the margins, so we just customize it, and we add also the color for ends. So the result presents some limitation which are, since they are not supported and we made it by CSS, they are still not 100% responsive. And by this I mean that, as you can see, for example, in this page, you can see that the margins are in this side, and in the other side, in the diplomatic edition, are on the other side. So this is quite a limitation. But the thing you can see is that you have a sort of anchor in the text, and that links you to the margin. So and also you can see, of course, deletions and additions with the colors of the end. Then the last level on which we worked was the critical edition, and the input was again the Storia Fiorentina, but in a different kind of perspective, because we wanted to make a comparison between the text before and after the censorship made by Baldini. So that's what we want to do. And the thing is that EVT2 is in the collation tab is made to compare different witnesses, but actually we are thinking about just one witness that is the same RC4 before and after the censorship. So we just rethink about our witness, and we decided to split it like in RC4 and RC4C, which means censorship. So we just enable in this way the tag apparatus. So what we did is actually is not the proper way to do this, also because there are some tags that do some kind of huge portions of text to compare between the collation thing. But actually they present some kind of bugs. So we just chose to highlight the parts that we want to compare as lamps. But actually, we also talk with the EVT development team, and we are waiting for the new release, like the official release, to solve these things. And we just prepared how to convert our file also for make it work properly. But actually, this kind of visualization is quite good too. So the result is this one, where you have the part where you have the text. This is RC4, and you have the text, which is highlighted. And in the RC4C, it has been cancelled. So it's an omission. We consider it as an omission. So you have all the metadata you need to understand who did it and why he did it. So I can show you quickly, I think, also the website to see it just live. And so we have a website where we just made a brief introduction about the project, about what we are doing, and also about the historical contextual information, and also some like technical records of what we did about our workflow. And this is the edition, the actual one. So it just takes a minute. So I want to start with this one, which is the index part that I showed you. So you can see the name entities, places, and people. Then you can see the text along. And in the trans edition features, as with our knowledge site, you can see people, places, and dates on the text. For what concern the name entities, so places and people, you can see additional information about them, like a biograph code and their biography in the Dizionario Biografico, and the same for also people, for places. So that's it. And then again, you can use this tool to just pick up all the things we encoded and to make like a table of content, like some notes you can just go back and see. Then we have the visualization we chose for the diplomatic edition, the preferred one, I mean, so we don't need it anymore. And in the diplomatic edition, you can move through the pages which are connected with the image, and so you can see also this, the margin that said, and they are on the margin or on the bottom of the page, along with whichever kind of correction they made in also in the lines. And then, even because we use so many hands and so many colors, you have a legend where you can see the diplomatic edition with all we did, and the same for the critic one. And also an info button to understand what we did, along with all the witnesses we used. And I said RC4 and RC4C. And then you can make a comparison between the diplomatic and critical edition, so that the thing is that for the critical one, as I said, we wanted to make a text that is quite readable. So you can see all the text just by scrolling down the page, and they are still not connected with the diplomatic edition. So you have to move from one page to another to confront them. The thing is that to sort of fix it, we choose to use these little like placeholders to tell the user where he is in reading the text. And finally, the collection tab, you can compare one witness. The first one is RC4 and the second one is RC4C, where you, for example, you have to choose both critical, of course, and where you, for example, see this thing that is highlighted, and in the legend, you can see there is a deletion. So you can just click on it to have further information, like this one, and then just go to the correspondent one in the other witness to see what it happened. And so in the text, you can see that we have some deletions and some additions. And the interesting part is that the censorship was quite heavy. So if you just scroll down both of them, you can see that the first one is quite long. And in the second one, you have just few text because most of it is just has been deleted. So I think that's it. And I think I finished.
Thank you. Here I'm again with another project. Thank you, Valentina. Valentina did a great job. Well done, and in 2 or 3 months. So we can thanks to the lockdown, because I am sure that if not, we shouldn't have been finished in such a short time. A very interesting philological case, as you have seen. I'm here on behalf of Dario Brancato. You have understood he is the very specialist on Varchi. I've been involved in this project because I am fond of Varchi and I am fond of EVT, as Roberto Rossari del Turco knows, because I think that EVT provides a very useful way to represent markup text, and I wanted to use Varchi's edition, Varchi Storia Fiorentina, as a case, a philological case study, which in my opinion was really interesting, not only because it provides a case of censorship, but also because it deals with a particular period of Italian history. Valentina have said that the Storia Fiorentina deals with all the facts which occurred in Florence from 1527 to 1537. But at the beginning, Benedetto Varchi wanted to write only the history of only 3 years, and the original project was developed in 12 books. Then Cosimo decided to change the original project and to add some more years. But as you have seen, the author's will was censored, and as it's the very first time in this critical digital edition that you can read the original Varchi's Storia Fiorentina, because Storia Fiorentina was known in manuscripts and then in print only from 1721. So it's here the very first time, and we wanted to develop this project, also involving especially books from 10 to 12, because they deal with the Florence siege. And before dealing with the Florence siege, Varchi provided a description in the 9th book of Florence, and we have a very detailed description of the city, of all the monuments and streets, and we are dealing with the Renaissance period. So this is a very interesting text, not only for Italianists, but also for historians and art, all those who deal with art aspects. So I wanted to remember Dario Brancato is also Carisbo Fellow, because we won a grant from Carisbo, and we were able to develop this project not only thanks to Francesca Tomasi and the HDK course, but also to Carisbo. And we made a lot of seminars and meetings on Teams, on Zoom, and all other platform, just to develop the model and to discuss about what we wanted to represent, which was not only a diplomatic and a critical, but also, as you have seen, a genetic edition, because we are representing also the latest corrections made by Varchi's hands. So we wanted also this case, this digital edition, to be something like a knowledge site, to represent people, facts, and a timeline. Roberta Priore and Milena Corbellini worked with Valentina Pasquale very hard in these latest months, and I think that they made a great job here, as you can see, and we are willing to develop this project in the future, because it's worthwhile seeing such an interesting aspect of our history. And trying to understand what a digital critical edition may offer to philology and to literature in general. So I stop here because we are late, and probably in the discussion we can deal. Also because I think that Roberto Orsari del Turco, which I really thank for his help and for the help of EVT developing team, because they as if we were driving a car which hadn't been really put on the market, and driving this car we were asking the developer just to change something or to customize something just for our philological case. So they were really available for us. So thank you, Roberto, another time. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Valentina, for this project, and thank Paola for your time. So it's nice because we, I think, cross a lot of different aspects of the digital humanities research. So you guys have presented some of the principal lines in digital humanities. So this idea of reusing application of work on new methodologies in genetic edition, it's a very original way to rethink of digital as a way for enriching the interpretation of the editor in order to work on the textual transmission and the textual tradition. So thank you very much for Valentina for the work and for having created the whole platform. So I don't know if there are any question. Just Roberto, thank you, Valentina. You guys did a great job in customizing EVT, so thank you, Roberto, also for your help, as Paola said. And it was nice, and hopefully work together is every time a very good idea to share experiences, and as digital humanities is asking us to work in a very collaborative way in order to do a great job as the result of a collaboration. So thank you, Valentina, and I'm going to ask Paola to remain and to enter Fabio, Marilena, and Francesca, just in order to have a very final and quick, because we have 10 minutes discussion. The topic of the discussion, from my point, was a very huge, so the future of the research in the digital humanities domain. And so 10 minutes maybe are not enough in order to discuss on this point, but I was just interested in sharing with you your own personal idea on which are the main, which are the future of the digital humanities. By starting from this project, we have seen the problem of reproducibility, the problem of putting open source software, the role of data visualization in order to enrich the experience of the final reader, the role of using linked data and knowledge organization system and semantic web activities, and so on. So just a very few reflection from your own point of view of the future of the research in the DH, by starting from this project that I think has been able to summarize the main tendencies in the digital humanities research. I don't know, we use a very alphabetic order. So Marilena, you are the first and Fabio the last. So Marilena, Francesca, Paola, and Fabio.
No, I have just a very general comment, just to follow up what I said when Sebastian discussed. I think in general, one of the lacking points in DH, and people, I think it's getting aware of this problem more and more, is that when you produce a research product, it has to be complete, documented, and leveraged. So especially this second part. So the idea to create something that can be reused by others, so let others do serendipitously discover how to reuse what you have done, I think it doesn't work. It cannot work forever. And that's why many digital humanities projects die after a while, because they are not felt as part of the community, they are not contributed by the community, and they are not announced in general. And possibly people don't understand for real what is the real benefit of having such products. So I think one of the future research line in digital humanities, and something that we should have clear whenever we do something and we ask students to complete a project, is make something that it's going to last, which is not just as small as the smallest research problem that you had at the beginning, but try to generalize it as much as you can, even though I don't believe there is a correct balance between specialization and generalization, because if it's too general, it doesn't solve any problem. If it's too specialized, it solves just that problem and nobody cares about that problem. So we need to find, I think we need to have better research questions in general, so that it's clear that what you do, it's useful for the community, not just for researchers, or not just for students, or not just for specialized audiences. But yes, I think reframing the research questions that you have and the way you show what you have done, it's useful, it's the most important thing, even more than exploring new technologies and so on. Sometimes the very research question is behind that, and the technology is a consequence. So this is just my 2 cents.
Yes, thank you very much. If you people that are listening want to know a little bit more about us, because I didn't introduce the different speakers, so I'm sorry about that. But on the DHarc project, on the DHarc webpage, you have a specific page related to people where you can learn a little bit more about us, about your interest, and about our research, and also about guys that have presented their work, because we have a special part on collaborators inside DHarc, where all people is presented. So Francesca, if you want to share with us your point. Thank you, Marilena.
Yes, I think not only the future, but the present of digital humanities research is about to explore the possibilities offered by linked open data. I agree with Marilena, and I think that linked open data are a very interesting direction, and especially for digital scholarly editions, but we need more tools, general tools to move digital scholarly editions to the semantic web environment. And to do so, we need well-documented tools. So the job Sebastian did is very interesting to me. I think this is the direction: documentation, linked open data, and work on tools that everybody can use, even if they have a little knowledge of technology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I ask people before asking Paola to give her point of view. If you have any question, please use this time in order to put your question on YouTube Live or on Facebook, just in order to share. Then we will share your comments. Paola.
only few words. I have spoken a lot today because with a double double project. I wanted only to stress that if we have succeeded in this project, and this morning we have seen a lot of very well done project. It depends on the fact that we have a strict relationship between the course, DHDK course, and our research. So the connection is between a master degree course and what we make as a teacher and as inside the university with everyday work in our discipline and our research project, because sometimes, especially on philology, these two aspects are not connected, and you think about your edition, your critical edition, but you don't really share your project and your idea of your edition with someone, and especially with students and young researchers. So I think that this is the key of a good research project today and in the future.
Okay, thank you, Paola. And Fabio, you're the only man now, not just the final speaker, but the only man in this female discussion.
This is very sexist. I consider myself the only truly technologist rather than the only man. And I was, by listening and thinking about the comments that have been made so far, I've been wondering whether my role as a technologist has some differences from what has been expressed so far. And I've been thinking, I'm not particularly interested in the technologies, markup languages, semantic web, or linked data, and so on. They are a way to obtain specific results, and maybe the fact that I know how to deal with them and I do not know exactly the results that is interesting to reach is what makes me different in many aspects from people with a humanistic background. And I was wondering, so for instance, my main objective in the following years is to find ways and tools and mechanisms to express opinions over scholarly data, over cultural heritage objects, and so on. And I think that the fact that I'm not satisfied of how you express personal opinions on these things, rather than how you express them syntactically using XML, TEI, or semantic web RDF technology, and so on. I think this is what is interesting to me. How we express information is not, it's important, of course, but it's not the main aspect. What are we going to express is what is important to me. And from my point of view, the switch from facts into points of view over data that can be interpreted in many different ways is an important step forward that is still to be done.
Okay. Oh, okay. So you're finished. I didn't understand if there is something missing on my audio or it's your final.
That was my final.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so Paolo tell us that he agree with Marilena. A successful dissemination to a larger public is the key to preserve DH research outputs. So we have an agreement of Paolo who's working as well inside the DHarc Research Center, and no other comments or no other reflection by people. So thank you very much. There is maybe Eben, we can speak about in a separate. So write me an email, and then we'll discuss about it, because maybe now we need to leave the discussion because we are a little bit late, and this request will ask me too many time in order to have an answer in a few minutes. So thank you very much, Paola, Marilena, Francesca, and Fabio, with this very final discussion. And I ask guys that presented to enter just for a very, very final reflection. So thank you very much. You did really a great job. So hope you will go on as you are doing with research in digital humanities, because all of you are still involved in digital humanities activity. So you have not finished here. You know that this is just the very starting point of your activity, and hope you enjoy your work and enjoy what you are doing. And please go on, because you demonstrated to have absolutely the digital humanities attitude. And so I hope you will go on studying and doing research on this field.
Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you very much
to everybody
Yeah.
else in the live chat, in the live comments.
Yes.
And really thanks for having us here and expressing ourselves.
Wonderful. So goodbye. Remember, I hope the live will remain, and we will put it on our DHarc webpage and our DHDK webpage as well. And people who are interested in going in with this topic, please write us. We will be able to go on speaking with the community about this topic. This was just a very first presentation of activity in DHarc, and I would like to go on with this kind of approach when we are dealing with new projects or with a new version of our project. So thank you very much, everybody, and see you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.